Yeah. Let me show you cook it this way. Okay, that's fine.
Cheese?
Yeah. Yeah, hello, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I'm sure most of us are wondering what Wiki-Menstruation and sustainable development are. So I'm going to try and do a little justice to that, and we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to do a little introduction of what I think it is. So this is a little slide or presentation I want to do as well. So I said it's a deliberate effort to contribute to or integrate and provide information on menstruation as a form of education on the various Wikimedia projects. So the key words here are it's a deliberate effort, and then also it's supposed to provide information on menstruation as a form of, in a way to educate or add as a form of education on various Wikimedia projects, such as translations, maybe to translate some of these articles already that exist on menstruation to other languages that people can relate to. Then it's a subset of Wiki education. Wiki-Menstruation hopes to address and present the various issues related to menstruation, that's Wiki pages on menstruation, menstrual health, including but not to limit it to the physical, social, and economic issues related to it. Then this would ideally include Wiki-Menstruation pages in all languages, like I said earlier, in all languages possible and available on Wikimedia, so that the various readers and contributors can participate in their language of choice. So, what are the problems associated to this topic? The main problem faced by women and girls are the expense or the cost of commercial sanitary products, absenteeism where girls do not attend school when menstruating, unhygienic ways to dry menstrual materials, inadequate waste disposal facilities, lack of privacy for changing menstrual materials, poor quality sanitary products, the lack of complementary resources for washing such as soap and clean water, limited education and publication in different languages about the facts of menstruations, limited access to counseling and guidance, lack of confidence caused by cultural myth, embarrassment and low self-esteem, and then systems that influence attitudes of society. So I also provided a sort of solution to it. So based on an informed point of view, Wiki-Menstruation can positively influence the following effects in alignment with the SDG goals. That's gaining confidence and a healthy self-image, obtaining a quality education that may help moving on to a fulfilling job or career, contributing and participating in gender equality debates, thereby increasing the number of people involved in the period innovation conversations, and demystifying limited social taboos. So, Padman, as a group that tries to help young leaders, in society in different countries in Africa, has this impact. So, there's social impacts on Padman. So, peer educators keep girls in schools informed on reproductive and mental health while helping them move uncomfortable conversations to comfortable ones with boys around. They currently have 6 trained men teachers, 14 female teachers supporting, 32 trained student educators in 12 schools, 7,200 girls, and the data has shown steady increase in the number of girls attending school since distribution of sanitary towels began in 2017. So this is linking it to the SDG goals as to what we want Wikipedia to do. So as an online platform of knowledge, moving forward to raise awareness of Wikipedia's, for knowledge seekers, letting people know what that Wikipedia is a place where they can find information about menstruation in general, the current state of menstrual health, access to information on what menstrual health products are currently on the market, whether or not they are eco-friendly, and whether or not they are chemical free and friendly to the bodies of women and girls. Access to information in different languages, which is something strongly encouraged and emphasized for the next generation of wiki contributors. That's if they can write in another language and get on board and contribute to these articles and help drive the Wiki-Menstruation movement of the future. So now we come to Agnes.
Thank you.
Can you introduce yourself?
I'm sorry, my name is Stella. I'm sorry, my name is Stella Sesi Agui. Yes. And so now I'm going to introduce my panels to you. I have here Blossom Ozurumba.
No, just can stop. I'll introduce myself.
And Linda Adra Fletcher. So I will let them do more introductions about themselves and what they do and how we can relate what they do to Wiki-Menstruation. So,
can you tell us what you do? Only your name.
okay. So, we start with Linda.
Okay.
Yes, Linda.
Well, I met Padman Chase 2 years ago at an editathon that the Swedish Embassy did. So we were able to help him set up a username, and there were some more events that Wikipedia New York City was doing, so he was able to come to those events. So over the last 2 years, we've kept the communication going. In fact, last year, when we met him at the editathon that the Swedish Embassy did, we communicated, so I told him about the Wikimania Cape Town. So lo and behold, we wrote a lot of letters, we managed, and he actually made it to Cape Town. And a lot of people were very shocked because we were really struggling to get support. And then when he shows up in Cape Town, people say, how did you get here? So with Chase, I would say it's a case of the mentors covering for the mentee, because Chase wrote this proposal. So it was part of, I would say that was Sustainable Development Goal number 17 with partnerships. And I think part of partnerships is not how many edits a person does, because he's been to about 6 or 7 events that we've had in New York City. In fact, he went to the, 2 weeks ago, he's still in New York, he went to the New York Wikipedia picnic. So every event we do, if he's in town, I let him know. And we have partnered with him, with the UN, the Conference on the Status of Women, for the last 2 years. And one of the things we've been trying to work on is to have more editathons within some of the people that we know that come to the conference every year. And I've been going to that conference for 10 years. So a lot of the different groups I know. So I've met some people here that actually live in Cape Town, and I know some women that live in Cape Town. And we're trying to get the CSW more technically involved. What Sweden is doing, we want the other countries to do too. Because a lot of times they talk about women need to be more technically involved, they need to be more involved with new media. So we want to be able to facilitate this year. So the last 3-4 years, with the South African women, they come into the community, they do a presentation to the community in New York City, in Harlem, and they do another one in Brooklyn. And that was quite an achievement, because I was telling them the only group that comes into the community is the Cuban women. And we want to see more groups come into the community. And somebody told me about the Wikipedia conference that's going to be in Nigeria. So I sent it last year to a whole bunch of the women groups that come to the conference. And actually 3 women want to come. So now I have to go back and resend all that information to let them know that that's going to be in November. So one of the things we want to do is have more impact. And that's something that me and Camilla talked about in Montreal. How do we have more of a Wikipedia presence when all the women from all over the world come to the CSW? So Chase has been one of those partnerships. And I've learned a lot about menstruation issues. I didn't even know about the cup until last year. So that was a new, I didn't know about the cup. And I also, just this summer, all of a sudden, I went to 2 cultural events, and there was a table with this brand called Cherish. And it's a new sanitary napkins with the ion strip. Now that is not listed on the Wikipedia article on sanitary pads, but I was a little leery of posting it, and I sent the information to Chase, but I said we have to look at this a little further because there's some pros and cons. Some people say it's pseudoscience, but at some point we are going to add that to the list. And then one of the main things I do is I share what I do, articles that I do, and come up with articles that Chase can do with his group. And I think because that group does a lot of advocacy, you can't expect people that do a lot of organizing events and a lot of advocacy work to actually do a lot of admin. They just can't. They can do a little bit, but they can't do a lot. So I had recommended I came to that realization that the best way for Chase to engage the young women in the community that he works with is to just show them YouTube clips. So what I do is I have a whole on my Google Drive, I have a list of like about 15 files. And when I find people that are interested, I direct them to my Google Drive. I have a list of articles I've written, what I've learned from doing these articles that I plan to do, my whole list. Then I have a list of where they can go on YouTube and learn the different aspects of Wikipedia. And another, we've decided that it's not all about getting people to edit. Sometimes people will come to one session, you don't see them again. I might see them in the community, and I would tell them, well, we have events every month. Come to 2 or 3, then you'll be okay. And if you need one-on-one, just let me know, because I have my laptop. And then also we want to have more workshops where we focus, this is what I've been working on with a few people in the community, where we have workshops where we focus on references only. Because I think it's an easy way to engage a person without writing a whole article. And what I tell them is like, we go to the back of the book. So they used to people tell them to go to the front of the book. I tell them we're going to go to the back of the book. And we're going to go to the index, and we're going to look at things that you're interested in, certain history books. And then we're going to see what the content looks like in the Wikipedia article and see how we can add the book references. Because a lot of incidents in history that happened 100 years ago, books have just recently been written about. So that's information that can be added. And one of the reference projects that I'm going to be doing with a few people in the community, in 1919 in the United States, it was the Red Summer. We've been talking about this for over a year. So what we're doing, we ordered a whole bunch of books from Amazon about the Red Summer of 1919. And what we're going to do is we're going to add references from books that were written. So that's
all right.
okay.
Tell us about yourself and
Okay.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Blossom Ozurumba. I am from Nigeria. I live in Abuja. I've actually not met Chess before, but I follow him on social media. So when he got to know I was coming here, he then told me about this session and asked that I should be able to share a bit of my personal experience. But then I think the major essence is to try to tie the amazing work that he's been doing with Padman Africa to
The SDGs.
To the SDGs, and then to the Wikimedia movement, and how it can probably find some form of expression. Thank you. And how it can probably find some form of expression in Wikipedia. So if you're looking at it from probably the Wikipedia point of view, I know there is a whole lot of content that has to do with menstruation, period, and all that. But then, I don't know the translations in other languages, but in the language that I generally work on over 90% of the time, it's more or less non-existent, and it's actually a great content that we would want to see in there. and also not forgetting the fact that there are a whole lot of cultural interpretations to women and girls, especially young girls, you know, when it has to do with period and menstruation and all that. I think we're just having this conversation outside where, because of probably, I don't know, probably change in diet and a whole lot of other stuff, so young girls tend to see their period really early. My daughter, she just turned 11, and
Wow.
she's already started seeing her period as it's
That's happening
when
in
she
the
was
United
about
States
10.
too.
You know, so, and when I compared that to myself, I think I was about 15 or thereabouts. So there's a whole lot of you know, changes in the way people experience things, relate to things, and interpret things. And if you also then probably look at the cultural implications of some of this, then it also then places that demand that we need to put as much accurate information and content so people can actually consume
At
the
a
right-
younger age.
yeah, the right information about these things. And also don't forget the fact that a whole lot of probably information that we pass across could just be hand-me-down information that we probably got from our parents, where I'm coming from. So a whole lot of information, it's not really documented, it's probably oral history. So you get to hear your mom say this, and then you automatically, oh, my mom can never lie to me. That's her reality. And then you just pass that down to your children. And chances are that you might end up passing the wrong message or the wrong information just because that is how it has always been. So I am personally looking forward to how we can be able to tap some of this oral history in developing worlds, you know, and then see how we can be able to give it a fuller and a better expression that is authentic, accurate, and is relatable.
Thank you.
And I'm glad you mentioned the oral history component,
Yeah.
because I've talked to Chase about that.
Ah.
Because sometimes I will talk to older women, right, like in their 80s and 90s, to find out what did they use, you know, because all we know is tampons and napkins, right? But that has, I think that happened around, I think me and Chase was sending articles back and forth. That just came about around World War II. So that's relatively new. So a lot of the older women will tell you that they use rags, they use cloth. So there's always a lot of people that come to the UN and they talk about the reusable ones that are cloth. And then that can, to me, that could be a problem, because if you have clean water issues, then how sanitary is that method? And in fact, we ran into a woman, just by coincidence, somebody sent me an email about a woman in Pittsburgh. Well, she had organized a group of women to actually make reusable sanitary napkins with cloth, and they're sending them to Gambia and Kenya. So it was, she says she doesn't know if she's going to continue the project. But we haven't been able to physically meet with her, but she talked to me, she talked to Chase, and it was like, well, it'd be great if we can just get her to do a 3-minute YouTube clip, how she organized the women to actually do a project like that, to make reusable sanitary napkins to go into other countries. So some of the SDGs is number 1, poverty, and not only is it happening in Nigeria. On Thursday, I was just sitting at a table and I met these tourists from Wales, and they were telling me the same problem is going on in England, where poor women are not able to afford napkins.
Yeah.
So then when we have a younger age, then it becomes a whole other issue. Where's an 11-year-old going to get money to get a napkin? When I was growing up, women didn't get a period till they were 16, 17, and 18. It was very few women that got one at 14, but now it's 10 and 11 years old. And number 3 is good health and well-being, because women produce, and infections can affect a woman's ability to conceive. So that's where the serious health issue is concerned. And then quality education, when they have to miss school, that's an issue. And then I've just been finding out recently, in some countries, if a woman is on her period, a young girl's on her period, she doesn't go to school. it's okay to not go to school. But in the United States, you go to school when you're on your period. You know, that's just, you know. And I asked one young woman who told me she had a lot of cramps. I said, well, what do you do? She says, I power through it, which was a good way of communicating that to someone else. Even if you might feel a little sick, there are things you can do, but to miss a week every month, it's not very good at all. So let me see. Clean water and sanitation. We mentioned that earlier. That's an issue, especially if you're going to be using the reusable pads. You know, how clean is the water? So that becomes an issue. Again, that reflects back on health and because we're more prone to infections than men. So that's something that we have to deal with it. And then 17, we talked about that already, partnerships and how we connected with Chase.
So, yeah.
I have a picture of Chase right here. From,
Yes.
from when he was in New York. But I just want to mention that Chase, he was in communication and it looked like he was going to be able to come, but it didn't work out. But yeah, he's very, very active and just very excited about this. He's very passionate. Yeah.
Yeah, he's pushing all of us.
Yeah, and he just got right involved in everything and has sustained his involvement. I know that his group is doing a lot, but I have it here, but I don't think it.
Okay, all right. So please, do any of you have a question for the panel?
No, if you have something, you can join.
Yeah, you can.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's just an Instagram. That's when we met him.
Okay. Yeah, so but if anybody has a question or
And he's
any
been to about
contribution
6
you
of
want
our
to add to
events.
this,
Yeah.
that's fine.
He even went to the picnic.
Yeah.
So whenever he's in town for like a conference or something, if we're doing anything, I let him know so he can get more training. Because he's been to Wiki-Data, he's been to some of our edit-thons. It was one time I showed him how to put a wiki book together. That might be something he might want to do with some of the people because that's pretty easy to do. We showed him how to do that. So he's pretty involved. Like I said, when you find someone that's involved, you keep that friendship, you keep that communication, because that's the person that's going to advocate for Wikipedia. So that's very important. Not how many edits a person does. You know, we're not trying to get 1 million edits out of him.
So please, do any of you have any questions or you want to add some, like any contributions to the discussion?
I have a question regarding the health aspect because the menstruation is something that is very, very different for each girl, for each woman, and a lot of women, girls have problems with it. And there's no information like real health information, like medical information. If that's also something like you want to change, or how one can change it with the doctors, because the doctors don't put money into female.
I think that's actually a good place where Wikipedia can come in. You know, I talked about being able to provide accurate information. So we can probably, I think in the presentation that we got earlier from Chase, he talked about something like Wiki-Menstruation month. So where we probably a particular month is dedicated globally, October of every month, for people to be able to create and contribute content that would probably answer some of these questions and all that. So if that it's done and a huge awareness is created in that regard, it can also just help people to be able to get the information that they need as when they need the information.
And then what responsibilities do the institutions have within the country, especially elementary school with young girls that have periods? How do they get sanitary napkins? You know, and then I think in England there was an article we just looked at a few days ago where they're raising the taxes on it. So they have a serious movement there. So actually Nigeria can learn from what England is
we've-
doing it, yeah.
Yeah, we have something like that. I recently I read some young person came up with this idea that sanitary pads should not be taxed.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
because you would find out that it's gradually becoming unaffordable every day. So you would see a lot of people having to use toilet roll or even
Cloth.
I wouldn't call it rags, probably napkins that they can probably wash or cloth that they can wash and stuff. Then in some cultures in Nigeria, you actually see people that dig the spot on the floor and then they just sit there for the 5 days.
For the 5 days?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I read that happen probably because I stay in the city
Wow.
center. I don't get to experience some of those realities. But then if you probably go into the real remote areas where there is a lot of poverty and people don't have as much funds as they would want to, so they would not see that expense as a priority. They would rather, okay, as a young girl or a young woman, you can probably just lose productivity for the period of 4 or 5 days and then dig a hole, you sit there, drop your thing for the period and what? The marriage. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I think some cultures also, and probably.
No, because for very many of the cultures back home from where we come, when a girl starts menstruating, I mean, this is now her passage into adulthood, yeah? And adulthood at this point means marriage. So,
Okay, so that's an indication that she can now start having.
exactly. And the girls themselves they see it that way, and they consciously dismiss themselves from any social activity apart from thinking about marriage. Say, now I'm a woman.
And if menstruation is starting earlier, maybe at 15, it's one thing, but at 10 to be marriageable.
Yeah.
No,
No,
some
yeah,
cultures,
yes,
10 is fine.
we have
way too young.
incidences of early child marriage, especially in certain religion. So probably they accept that. But then the challenge with that is if you look at the health impact, where you have the VVF and a whole lot of health challenges that can result from that kind of decision making. But then the really sad thing is, like she said, she used the right word, the marry you off. So normally it's not even a decision that the child would want to make. So it's like some adults, maybe the parent or the older relation would take that position on behalf of the child, and it's really
Because she has a period?
Yes, no, this
Yeah.
is
She
child
get married off.
marriage.
Yeah, they
And
just
adult
assume
child
you can have a
marriage.
child. So it's quite depressing, and it's still very much tied to poverty, and it's still very much tied to people not knowing that they can actually think differently or do things differently. I feel really emotional.
That you could be active during your menstrual
At this
period.
point. So where exactly can Wikipedia come in aside from providing information? I don't know. You're the moderator, sorry.
Yeah. Then you've already asked the question as well. So
Oh, you wanted to ask me?
Yes.
Oh, maybe I asked, so you answer.
Well, we have to find places where we can write articles. The more you read about the subject, the more you're going to come up with ideas of an article that you can write to add.
Sure.
Now, somebody can write an article about that new sanitary napkin pad with the ion strip that needs to be added to the data. Because that's a new product. I just saw it this summer, and I didn't even know it existed. It's supposed to do something to balance the pH and less cramps. So I don't know, but it's not on the article, so it needs to be added.
I also think we might probably have to find a way to connect some of these proposed articles to Esteem and Confidence. Let me give you a quick example. I was taking my daughter back to school, and normally I would get her sanitary pads and then put it in. She would just have the bulk, but then I would always put some in a transparent bag, like I don't know what you call it, but we call it Ziploc. We have this Ziploc bags, you know. So I would put like two and then put it, and then I would always tell her this should be in your school bag, you know. So I think I don't know what happened, and I was just holding it and was handing it to her. We were in the school, and I just saw this quick movement. She quickly wanted to collect it and hide it. I said, no, 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 no. What's going on here? Are you ashamed of pad? Period. Where are you learning that? I definitely didn't teach you to be ashamed of your period. That the fact that you're holding a pad. So you see people that buy it seems like something you should be ashamed of, something you should hide from Sam. Basically has seen it all as well. So I don't know, or something we should hide from him. Why should we hide that from you? It's who we are. It's our reality. We don't owe you any explanations. So I saw that as a teachable moment, and you know, I sat her down and explained to her, you should never be ashamed of this, like never. So apparently I didn't teach her that, so she might have probably just learned that from, you know, peer-to-peer association and all that. So we also need to talk about these things so people would not attach the wrong expressions to the things that are just normal, natural, you know.
Because it's seen as something that's dirty.
Yes.
But it's not dirty. I'm
It's
not my
bloody and
period right
dirty.
here as I'm talking to you.
Congratulations.
Give it up for the menses.
Well, I was just going to say, my mother's mother, I don't think she was very educated, and coming from a bit of a poor background and stuff like that. And she knew it was her duty to tell her daughter something, and she could mail away for a packet that came in a brown neutral envelope, didn't say where it was from, just addressed. And then she said to my mother, here, and then walked away. That was the extent of her communication. And I have those pamphlets, and I've been thinking about scanning them and putting them on Creative Commons. And
That'd be great.
and because I think they're actually pre-World War II. My mother was born in
pre-World
1923.
War II, okay.
But they're all full of euphemisms. Now you will become a young woman. Nothing about, you're going to bleed and it's going to be like this.
You're just beating around the bush.
Exactly. Lots of pages saying nothing like, put it in your pants, and then when you know it's too much blood, you know, take it out. Be sure to dispose of it cleanly, or you know, nothing like that. And it's all this like, oh, yeah, woman. And that's and so I think if that's tradition is in there, and then my mother kind of did, because when I got my period, then she told me, you know, I said, what are there's these pads and there's these Tampax. Oh, you can't use a Tampax until you've gotten married. And I didn't know why.
And
But
she
I
didn't
think
tell you why.
I kind of put two and two together. I think, you know, a thing that, you know, you insert and that kind of thing.
That's okay, wait a minute, hold on.
I think she
Say what it is.
I think she thought I would lose my virginity or something. I have no idea. But that's my guess, that knowing how, because her mother taught her to, then that's what she did, and I never got an answer.
No, in Nigeria actually there's another interpretation. So they believe it's going to widen your vagina. Stupid.
That could be. I mean, that could also be.
No, in Nigeria, generally they believe that it would disvirgin you, or like it's a form of masturbation. I think that's more the interpretation.
So you see, a lot of miscommunication, a lot of misconceptions around this, which we actually need to
So
address.
I wanted to say that apart from Wiki education, this relates also a lot with Wikimed. And I feel like with the collaboration with Wikimed, this is something that can help a lot in pushing the information about this out there. with the offline Wikipedia, the keywords, the internet in a box that the Wikimedia is doing. This, having, enough information about this on Wikipedia and then pushing it with to be used in all of these tools would be a good means to push the information out there.
So just to follow on what Sam said, it seems to me that a lot of the target audience for a lot of, let me not say target, why not? The target audience for a lot of WikiWeb work is doctors. And I was just wondering, just thinking about it, what would happen, or what would a Wikimed project or what Internet in a Box look like if it was being made for midwives and health workers who are women working in the community in a more peer-to-peer way that isn't about clinicians. So what would that look like, and what would a more how to clean your reusable sanitary towel if that's what you're using? What are some precautions that you might take? And also, because if it's talking about women's health more broadly, there are significant issues, especially with African and African descended women, about fibroids and fissures. What would a Internet in the Box look like for midwives, for health workers who are doing a lot of this work out in the community in regions that may not have access to mobile networks or to online?
So we need to look and see what information is in that Internet in the Box.
Well, I think the target audience for Internet in the Box is clinicians. What would it look like if there was? What do midwives need? What do healthcare workers need? People working that are working. Well, what does a school need? Really, if the school is doing this work in order to help the girls who are starting their periods, what do they need for adolescent girls to teach them about their bodies and how their bodies are changing, and what they need to do to take care of themselves?
Yeah, I just want to show you that I just looked up the menstruation page on Wikipedia, on the French Wikipedia. It doesn't have its section about protections. There is nothing about the cup, for example.
The cup is not there?
I researched the page, and the word is nowhere. So I assume it's not there.
So there's a lot of content gap.
So it's crazy, and the most of the introduction is like generally about menstruation, even in animals, but it's a bit. I think there is work to do. I didn't imagine it was that bad. I have to say. So I thank you for bringing up the subject. It's going to be.
Because we don't see that as women's empowerment.
There is an article about it.
But it's separate.
We don't see this as
We don't see
No, if you go to menstruation, there is
but it is.
nowhere in the menstruation.
Yeah, so the links must be missing.
It's a big fan.
It's like the word.
In the Spanish one,
Oh wow.
There is no section about how you can absorb your menstruation.
Content gap.
Hello. So we do this one at a time because we can't seem to hear everybody at the same time. Yes, so please, you were saying something, can you continue?
Oh, I was just saying that we don't have any mention of pads or cup or anything on the Spanish Wikipedia page for menstruation.
Wow.
Okay.
It's just like the biological description of what the menstruation is.
Okay.
I just want to be the devil's advocate and just say, so when we add these things, because I also now feel like I have to go and write an Afrikaans article about this, and you add the products that are available. Just remember, it's an encyclopedia. It's not a how-to guide.
Right.
Otherwise, we're gonna have people feel for reversions.
Yeah, of course.
So, just a quick question. The Internet in a Box, where can I find out about what that is?
So the Internet in a Box is a way to access. So it's a small computer that forms a mobile hotspot that you can log into from your phone that doesn't require Wi-Fi access or telecom access. So it's like a localized hotspot. It's been used quite a lot in the field by Wiki Project Med, and they have been putting the Wikipedia, the medical Wikipedia articles on it, and there's also a number of different products that they have. The guy, I forget his name, but they're here. They've done a few sessions about it. So if you ask, if you know anybody from Wiki Project Med, there are a few hotspots floating around.
Right.
The only thing you need is your phone and a power source, so your power bank. And you
Yeah,
can
they
have
showed
a
me
look at
doing
it.
the hackathon.
But as I said, it's been
Okay, just curious.
yeah. But as I said, it's been designed for clinicians, for medics. But what would that look like if it was designed for community health workers? It might look very different.
His name is Gabe Doolin.
Yeah.
Doolin, and he also has samples of them if you want to take a look at it and try it out and see how it works.
Okay. So, please, anybody has any other question or suggestion or?
I just want to say one thing. I'm glad that we're having this conversation because health is empowerment.
Thank you. Health is empowerment. And on that note, I want to say a big thank you to everybody for having time.
Brilliant.
Turn on the light.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess Chase is going to be
Thank
happy.
you.
We had to cover for him.
Sorry,
But it was cool.
3 of us?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.